Good evening, I'm John Bachman. The Trump administration wants 1,000 additional Border Patrol officers on the U.S.-Mexico border as soon as possible. Today, Homeland Security Chief Kirstjen Nielsen initiated what she calls emergency surge operations. DHS officials say they've made 100,000 border apprehensions just in March. That is the highest monthly number in over a decade. President Trump says he's serious about his threat to close down the southern border.
We have right now 2 big caravans coming up from Guatemala, massive caravans walking right through Mexico. So Mexico's tough. They can stop them, but they chose not to. Now they're going to stop them. And if they don't stop them, we're closing the border. They'll close it, and we'll keep it closed for a long time. I'm not playing games. Mexico has to stop it.
Also, President Trump has ordered cuts in aid to El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras as they try to get these Central American countries to stop the immigrants from starting their trek north. Officials, including Kirstjen Nielsen, have stated that the immigration system faces a total meltdown as agencies struggle to cope with the thousands of migrants already in custody. For more on this, let's welcome in former Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke. He's with us this evening. Also with us, Jessie Duff, a senior fellow at the London Center for Policy Research and a 20-year Marine Corps veteran. All right, Sheriff, first to you. When we spoke last, you kind of gave the DHS secretary a bit of a pep talk and told her to get creative. Now President Trump is saying he'll close down the southern border and cut aid if that's what it takes. Will those moves work?
Sure they will. The president's all over this, and he's been spot on. I trust his judgment. I don't want to get out ahead of him, but if he decides to close the border, I would support that. Look, who I'm concerned with is DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen. I don't know that she understands what's going on here. The Mexican side of the border is controlled by the drug cartels. What they're doing, and they're doing this in an organized fashion, is when they want to get drugs and human smuggling across, they flood checkpoints with immigrants so that it requires Border Patrol agents to be pulled from other areas. They're already depleted. Their ranks are thin. When they're sent to these checkpoints, that opens up these areas along the southern border for them to get drugs and human smuggling through. So I don't know if she understands this or not. She's really just moving deck chairs around on the Titanic. So, you know, before it got to this melting point, this is what I would want to know. Before it got to this melting point, when did she know that? When did she know that, and what did she do about it? Yeah, right now they're trying to drink from a fire hose, but you know, anticipation is a big part of leadership.
Jessie Jane, there's thousands of migrants currently in custody right now, tens of thousands actually, some being held in a makeshift facility underneath the overpass of a bridge in El Paso, Texas. Some of them released right out into the streets of Arizona. Who do you think is most responsible for the current border crisis?
Well, a lot of it has to do with the very legislation going on with the Ninth Circuit Court, because they have made it so that when they travel with these unaccompanied minors, it is more than difficult for the DHS and the ICE personnel to release them, send them back to their home country, I should say. They end up they're forced to release them for a court hearing for this asylum that they never show back up for. So, for example, this month alone, we had close to 4,000 illegals apprehended at the border in one day on March 19th. Now we're up to looking at 100,000 in this month alone. There's 168% increase of unaccompanied minors in 2018 compared to 2010. And this is largely because of a lot of the policies that were passed under the Obama administration that have not yet been reversed. And the court has strangled our system right now so that these unaccompanied minors automatically get these court hearings. They never show back up. And right now we have an unprecedented number of people in this country who have never showed up for this quote unquote asylum that they qualify for, or that they should be at least having a hearing for. So now we're looking at legislation that has to get reversed, has to get to the Supreme Court, but we can't move this stuff fast enough.
Yeah, there's a huge bottleneck in the courts. I mean, you can't just make judges overnight, even though Democrats have obstructed a lot of President Trump's judicial nominees. But on this level, you need to mint, hundreds of judges overnight, which doesn't seem possible. Bill O'Reilly lays a lot of the blame on American politicians, not just the Mexican and Central American countries. Take a listen to O'Reilly here.
And I've said from the very beginning that Mexico does not cooperate with America in sealing its southern border with Guatemala to prevent tens of thousands of Central Americans to march through that country up into the border, the U.S. border. So they don't cooperate. They could seal that border down there in Guatemala. That's not a hard thing to do. So the president's right to be really teed off. The problem is there's unintended consequences about closing the border. Hurts the U.S. economy. But, you know, in this kind of a situation, maybe you send a message. He's also threatening to cut aid, U.S. aid to Honduras and El Salvador and Guatemala, 3 countries that are really the big problem here right now. You know, it is a national emergency. The Democratic Party doesn't care. And that sends a signal to people south of the border that, yeah, you know, we got an entire political party who wants us to sneak in. And that's the message that's being sent.
So O'Reilly says there that the Democratic Party wants this to happen. But I think, Sheriff Clarke, you would place some of the blame on the foot of Republicans as well. Guys like Paul Ryan and some of the GOP senators who've been accused of being pretty squishy about border security, no?
Correct. Look, nobody in Congress is motivated or energized to do anything about this. I think silently Pelosi hopes that it hurts the U.S. economy. She feels that it'll hurt the president on this. I was down at the border, the southern border, 2 sectors, the Rio Grande Valley sector in Texas and the Big Bend sector in Texas. I saw for myself what was going on. I was staggered by what I saw. We saw groups coming up from Honduras and from Guatemala, and they had papers on them that gave them temporary visas to stay in Mexico. So the Mexican government is complicit in this. They're allowing them to illegally enter into their country. They're giving them documentation so that they can move throughout the country without being stopped and head toward the southern border of the United States. So, you know, the president, he's got to exercise some leadership. Sometimes there's political implications of this, but he doesn't care about political implications. He cares about the sovereignty of the United States, the safety and security of the United States. He's made it very clear this is a humanitarian crisis. He's made the case before the American people. The American people support him on this, and that's why I said I trust his judgment. Wherever he thinks we need to do, I'm going to support.
Yeah, Congress does seem to be concerned about the, political ramifications of this, and also health care as well, which we'll talk about coming up later in the program. But Jessie Jane, there's a new report from the AP that claims the Trump administration is considering a border or immigration czar to oversee policies across all the federal agencies. Reportedly in the running, former Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach, also former Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli, both very conservative. But do you guys remember when the Homeland Security Department was supposed to streamline our entire national security apparatus? Is more government really the answer here, Jessie Jane, when it comes to securing our border on the southern border?
The government has failed on every level continuously, and I'm not very optimistic that they would provide a solution. However, at this point, I'm willing to try anything. And if a czar can be appointed that can actually ensure that every department is in compliance to what the rules and regulations are, and that they're not allowing this surge, and we can potentially shut this border down, because this surge is having people staying in locations where, on military bases, being housed in locations where we've got homeless Americans, homeless veterans, and yet we're housing illegals. And not only that, they're releasing them into the streets of the United States. So now you've got the sanctuary cities that are enabling these populations to roam freely and ensure that we have more crime, because are they going to get employed? They're getting paid under the table. What are they doing to ensure that this whole process has been enabled by our very government? So I'm not as optimistic as I should be, but considering President Trump is a hardliner on this issue, I would be very optimistic with anybody he puts in place. And it's rare for me to say that about any government official, but I do suggest that the president has the right focus and will put the hammer down on this issue.
What do you think, Sheriff Clarke? Do we need a border czar to properly address this issue?
Why not? See, what the president needs is somebody that's going to be on his side, both operationally and politically. And he really can't trust all of these people within these agencies, because there are a lot of Obama holdovers, a lot of career bureaucrats who do not support his tough stance on border security. So I know Chris Kobach. I'm on the We Build the Wall board of directors with him. He has a firm grip on what's going on here. I know Ken Cuccinelli as well. I know that those people will have the president's back. I don't know that I want to just do anything. I want to do something effective. I'm going to follow the president's lead on this, because every move he's made along the southern border has worked. And I'll continue to say that I trust his judgment. But going back to the GOP, they had 2 solid years. It's easy to blame the Democrats. Now, sure, we can blame the Democrats, but the GOP had 2 solid years to do something about immigration and control the House of Representatives and the Senate. They could have got something to the president's desk, something effective that he would have signed They wasted that opportunity. So it's easy to, kick the Democrats around, and I'm willing to do that. But I'll tell you what, it was a big swing and a miss by the GOP in Congress for 2 solid years.
Yeah, you got to place blame where blame belongs, and sometimes that's at the feet of your own party, and that's the case here. Sheriff Clarke, I know you're a Democrat, but I know you support this president, but it doesn't seem like Congress, the Republican Congress, wants to get this done. President Trump's #1 campaign promise, and time is running out. Sheriff Clarke, great to see you. Jessie Jane's going to stick around with us. She'll be here with us for more of the show coming up. Great to see Sheriff Clarke. Meanwhile, President Trump says if Mexico doesn't immediately stop all illegal immigration coming into the United States, he will close the southern border. We want to know, what do you think? Should President Trump close the border? To vote, just text the word poll right now to 95577. We will immediately send you a link so you can participate. The poll is live right now. We'll have the results coming up later in the program. But pick up your cell phone right now and text the word poll to 95577. We'll send you a link that will allow you to vote. Don't miss your chance to have your voice be heard. Newsmax Now continues right after this. Watch Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing news channel, now in 65 million homes. Get Newsmax TV on all the major cable systems, or go to newsmaxtv.com and click on the Find Newsmax tab to locate us. Remember, Newsmax TV, where real news for real people.